And now it comes to the exciting part of the day, where we're presenting the benchmark results. And I'd like to call to the stage the team from Grovation that was behind all of the work that we're here about today. So to the stage, I'd like to welcome Sarah, who is the CEO of Grovation. I'd like to invite Rika as well, who is the Technology Solutions Leader. I'd also like to invite Lida van Staden, who is the People and Talent Solution Leader of Grovation. And last but not least, Hannes van der Merwe, who is the ICT Services Solution Leader at Grovation. Welcome, team.
Thank you, Pumza, for the introduction. We are very proud of this initiative that was led by Rika Meiberg, the head of our Technology Advisory Division. Grovation has a strong focus on businesses in the agri and food sector and believes that technology will play a significant role in disrupting and transforming this value chain. We have decided to perform this benchmark and plan on doing so on an annual basis to help businesses in the agri sector to make more informed decisions when developing and implementing their digital transformation strategies. We see this as just another way of helping to grow more sustainable businesses in Africa that have a real and lasting impact on our continent.
At Grovation, we believe that the primary industry will be severely impacted by technology disruption due to the high demand for food security and food safety and traceability. And the only way the agri-industry is going to make up these high demands would be through technology. Therefore, the primary industry is quite a big part of this benchmark. We have invited 926 participants, but unfortunately, only 4 submitted their data in the end. Therefore, this data cannot be used as a benchmark, but we can only share some of the interesting information from this specific sector with you. One of the participants, a mega farmer, has a highly mature IT environment with a good approved IT strategy that is aligned with that of a business. They use an IT governance framework to make sure that their processes and that of a business actually work smoothly together. On the other hand, we look at risk management for the primary industry, and it's interesting that IT audits are done by all the participants on a frequent basis and also across various other disciplines. But that is where the maturity of risk management ends. 2 other participants do not have a basic risk register in which they can anticipate the risks in their business. Moving to the next topic is ERPs. In the case of the primary industry, the 4 participants have various ERPs and there are actually no alignment between that. The 1 participant has a tier 1 or an enterprise level ERP system, while the other 3 are having ERP systems in either the tier 3 or the tier 4 level of ERPs, and therefore it's more to the lower end of the ERP solution stack. One of the lenses we used on the financial data is to see on which systems the participants spent most of their money. In the case of the primary industry, they spent 28% on their ERP solutions. They spent 15.7% on their network solutions. And coincidentally, those 2 are also the same on the secondary industry in terms of sequence. The interesting things about the primary industry is that the 3rd system is a specialist system. In other words, where they need systems specifically to produce their products, like a warehouse system or a pack house system, that they spend on 11.7%. And fourthly, and interesting and quite in line with expectations, is that the HR systems are quite high on the list with 11% of their spending. Now we know that the primary industry is quite labor intensive, so it absolutely makes sense that they spend quite a lot of money on their HR systems. Another interesting thing I want to share with you is that the primary industry spend, the IT spend versus their revenue is 1%, while the IT spend versus operational expenses ends up on 9%, and this is quite high. Now, remember what I said, that this is not a benchmark, but this is an observation, and we truly hope that in the next benchmark, we will be able to refine those numbers.
Let's dive into the results. The first section of results worth paying attention to is how well IT is aligned to the business. It is clear that IT is not optimally aligned to the business strategy, and that there are much to be done to close this gap. We are glad to see that 50% of the participants are planning on closing this gap by elevating the head of IT position to a C-suite level. However, the gap is prominent by the fact that only 40% of participants who have a documented strategy claims that it is aligned with the business strategy. And of those strategies, only 60% have been approved at the board level. What is really alarming is that only 20% claim to have a mandate to influence the business strategy, and 30% stated that the head of IT would never be considered for a seat at the boardroom table. From these results, it is clear how the mindset and views of top management, especially that of the CEO, will either enable IT to future-proof the business or not.
So IT governance is quite a sensitive topic, and many people ask me what it is and why it should be used. So what is it? IT governance is a set of standard practices that is used in the IT service management discipline to deliver services to the business and align to the business. It helps with controls and quality, consistency, and improvement. Okay, but what does it mean? I'll compare it for you to building a house. Whenever you build a house, you have to comply to certain regulations before the engineer will sign off the final structure. And that would be, for example, the foundation. The foundation will depend on the width and the strength of the concrete and the weight that the structure needs to carry. It could be electricity, it could be water, it could be the roof, and the engineer will have to use those before he signs off. Now, having said that, it is interesting that 30% of the participants do not have any IT governance structure in their environments. What does it mean? So it means most probably the IT strategies are not aligned to that of a business. It means most probably they don't have metrics, they don't have processes, and maybe those are there, but it's most probably that they're not aligned to best practices. And it could result in rework, in inefficiencies, in duplication, high cost. So if you think about those, I think it's really important to consider using an IT framework to help govern your standard within your business. To add to this, IT manages business system changes by means of using project methodology. And together with the business, they will then execute a project. And normally, a project management office would set the standards, the methodologies, the processes, sequence, governance to execute a project. So back to the analogy of building a house. If you build a house, you follow a certain sequence. And for example, you would not build a wall unless you have a foundation. And you would not put up a roof until you have a wall, typically. Okay. And the same for a PMO. A PMO would set the standards and the processes and the sequence in which things need to happen on a project. Now, I want to challenge you, as the results show us that 60% of the participants do not have a PMO. 60% of participants do not have a PMO. Yet, executive teams and CEOs are willing to risk a project of $1 million or 5 million or 50 million to save 1 or 2 million, not by not setting up a PMO, but they're willing to risk that massive project by saving 2 million rands. That does not make sense. So my invitation to executive teams in this industry is to say, really consider creating a good standard in which you can make those massive investments really work to your advantage.
The debate about best of breed versus single instance versus in-house developed ERPs are becoming more prominent, and I'm pleased to see that most of the respondents are not on the single instance bandwagon. We believe that the best-of-breed architecture will grow in popularity and that the majority of agribusinesses should consider this architecture. We believe that the role of the traditional single-instance ERP will shift to become a financial hub, with most of the operational systems integrating with it to the extent that it affects the general ledger. This will allow for more flexibility in the solutions business deploys, with less impact on the finance function every time an operational system gets replaced. From the data collected, it is clear that this architecture also benefits the bank, as participants deploying best of breed claims that it consumes only 10.5% of their budget, compared to 28.4% by those with in-house developed ERPs and 40% by those with single instance ERPs. We would urge those with aging systems to seriously consider best-of-breed architecture, as it will enable faster transformation and more flexibility.
The benchmark has taught us quite a few things around how IT is applied in the industry, how their strategy is applied, how they align their strategies to the business, the cost, the structures, the skills. And it really opened quite a few options for us and all role players on how to use this data to their own advantage. But the one emotional topic from experience I know is financial spending on IT. So I just want to put two conditions on before I discuss the results. Firstly, we ask the participants to create different lenses for us on the basis of finances and their total budget. So what does it mean? I would, for example, ask them, give me a view how much capital you spend compared to operational expenses. Or I would ask them, explain to me how much money you spend on run your business, transform your business, or grow your business. So those are two of the lenses. I just want to say that concept because I will refer to the term lenses quite often. The second thing is that two of the participants did not submit all their data, therefore there is a slight impact on the average results. I first want to share with you one of the expense line categories that we created was where we provided 10 categories to the participants and we asked them to divide and allocate their total budget to these 10 categories. Interesting enough that the single biggest line of expenses is against IT resources at 24.9%, which is quite high. This is actually not surprising. If you think about how technology keeps on exponentially explode, it requires that more skills is required in the world, as well as new skills. So we're always fighting for more skills in a world with already a shortage of IT skills. So that we do not expect to change soon. The other interesting expense line is the business support cost together with business license cost actually makes up 33% of cost in this specific lens. Now, that is perfect. We would expect that there's such a high spend on business systems. That's actually why a business is existing, that we can support them in doing their business. We do expect that that cost will increase over time, especially if we think about the references which Sarah did earlier in his discussion. The second component I want to talk about is the primary system spend. Now, I'm not going to spend time on all of these lenses within this specific category, but I am going to tell you about two interesting findings. So the first finding is that a mere 2% of IT spend is actually spent on business intelligence and data analytics. This is quite a shocking finding, but I will spend more time on that one a bit later. The second one in this specific category is where we say 5.3% of the primary system spending is on IT security. Now, that sounds low, and I do think it is low. And let me give you a bit of context. I've read an article yesterday morning where the article predicted that in the year 2020, and yes, COVID has an influence on this, the cost and the spending on IT security will increase by 8.7%. So we do expect that IT security, will over time increase further. The final financial slide focuses on IT spend versus operational expenses. And in the benchmark, we picked up a 5.43% of IT spend compared to the operational expenses of the organization. Now, there are many metrics in this benchmark related to finance. And obviously, we don't have a lot of time to discuss all of it here. And hence, I invite you to go onto the Grovation website to purchase your full report with all the financial metrics of the benchmark.
One of the most important questions to ask is how IT contributes to profit and how this contribution should be measured. It was very interesting to me that some of the participants selected not to submit their financial data. However, we received enough data to at least draw a line in the sand from a per user, per year cost basis. The average user costs amount to just over 62,000 Rand per year. We believe that the ultimate performance indicator and the best way to measure IT's contribution to profit is not to measure cost per user, but rather to measure turnover per employee. The reason why we believe this is that the main reason why you should deploy technology should be to increase one's employees' productivity and output. I know most management teams argue that technology should reduce the need for people. Still, in practice, we seldom see this as the main result. We see technology simply enhancing management's ability to manage more with the same staff complement. Even back in the day when the tractor replaced the ox, did we not see farmers spending less time on the field, but rather just increasing the size of the field due to the efficiency the technology brought? We see the same happening with modern technology, especially software solutions, and therefore we believe that measuring your IT department's ability to help your employees handle more is critical and will have a very direct impact on your bottom line.
Business intelligence and data analytics. A personal favorite of mine, but some disappointing results. So what is business intelligence? It comprises of the strategies and the technologies that companies use to derive at certain insights based on data. Now, a business intelligence platform, or also some people call it data analysis, is built on a solid architecture that enables them to expand in future. So if one considers that business intelligence and data becomes a strategic asset for organizations to get insights in things they never had before, it is really shocking that on average, only 2% of IT spend is on business intelligence and on data analytics. Now, that is quite something to think about. To add to that is that only 10% of the participants have a formal, documented and approved business intelligence strategy. None of them have an architecture documented and approved, and 30% of them said they don't spend anything on business intelligence and data analytics. Now, the irony is that if you go and look at the primary system spend, BI being 2%, and all technologies like printing and telephony both have higher spends than business intelligence. And these two cannot contribute to the strategy and the competitive advantage of an organization. So we at Grovation believes that companies need to make effort to get engaged and actually build a solid business intelligence platform in order to give them the competitive edge, or at least to remain within the run through their data strategies.
Good day, my name is Lira van Staden and I'm the People and Talent Solution Leader at Grovation Group. Today I would like to share with you some of the key findings from the IT Benchmark study. And I would like to touch on 4 topics. The first being the skill shortage in the IT space and the impact that this has on your business. And secondly, I would like to touch on 3 key processes in the people and talent space. The first being organizational culture and values. Secondly, succession planning. And lastly, performance management. So let's dive in. So there's a high demand for IT skills around the world, and this is called a major skill shortage. And this talent war is not going to stop anytime soon, because the ever-changing need for new technologies and new implementations of technologies in businesses is just going to escalate this. So this makes it really critical that you manage your people very well and that you attract and retain the right talent. So what we've done is we looked at 22 people practices that we've measured, and we asked the participants to give us an indication of the importance of that process in their business, and also the effectiveness of how well that process works within their business. Only 15% of the processes are deemed to be effective and in place by more than 80% of the participants. Now that is a real concern, because it means that from a people and talent management perspective, that a lot of the businesses are reactive in managing their people. When we look at organizational culture and values as a first one, however, 100% of the participants said that this is a very important process for their business. And 90% of them actually feel that they do already have something in place that's working really well for them. Now, organizational culture is the way we do things. It is the behavioral habits of people within the team. Now, if there's bad habits and bad behaviors within your team, you can immediately think that that will have a real impact on your productivity. So this is really good news, that it seems that these participants already have something in place in that space. On to the second point, succession planning. So what succession planning refers to is that you internally building a pipeline of talent, that you are able to fill your key positions from internally rather than recruiting outside. Now, 90% of people say that this is a critical process for their business, but only 10% seem to have this in place. And you know, if you don't start growing your own timber, you're going to struggle more and more to get people from outside because of the big skills shortage that we are facing specifically in the IT space. So the last process is performance management. Now, 30% of participants indicated that they have a performance management process in place that's working for them. That's very low. If you consider that performance management is the process that you need to link your strategic objectives to accountabilities for the people in your team. And performance management is a way of keeping them accountable, and it's making you more efficient and more productive. So it's really the one thing that you need to get right within the IT team. Now, let me get a little bit practical, on how beneficial performance management can be and how it can really shape the way we do things. One of the questions we ask is around the key roles and the percentage focus within their performance contracts on different areas in the business. Now, if you look at the head of IT role, what we saw is that about 40% of the participants assigned higher than 20% rating to operations, which means that as a head of a department, their focus is mainly on operations. It's one of the highest rated areas. Now, what you measure is what you get. What we experience is that people in that type of position, in a head of IT position, need to be more focused on strategy and people management. And we need to shift away from being a hands-on manager. So my fourth and final point brings me back to the skill shortage that we have specifically in the IT space. So it is critical that we attract and retain the right talent. And in order to do that, we need to implement the right people management practices. And this 15% of current well-implemented processes within the IT benchmark that we see there, we need to get that percentage up by focusing on really diligently managing people and getting the IT manager to have a higher focus on managing people. Thank you.
As the word infrastructure suggests, it forms the foundation of IT. We all know that having a strong foundation is key to anything in life, and so it is with IT as well. IT infrastructure relates to where all our business apps and databases run on. It's the underlying architecture that processes and transfers the zeros and ones that make up the email you send, the notification you receive on IM, and the invoices sent to your client, So as you can see, we are nothing without it. In the industry, we also see a surge in cloud spending. During the start of the COVID-19, at the beginning of the year, we saw significant growth on the cloud front due to everyone taking on the likes of Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and other remote working tools to continue working from home. Q2 was also the first quarter that spending on cloud surpassed that of on-site infrastructure. With internet connectivity also becoming more and more accessible here in South Africa, we will only see this trend accelerate with time. So, what we've then found in the benchmark is not surprising. 90% of participants indicated that they are moving to the cloud, with 10% already there, 50% partially there, and the other 30% planning to move in the next 3 years. Having a look at the industry, we can see that infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service adoption are also fueled on by the work from home movement that businesses were forced to adopt. Again, not surprising given the effect that the pandemic had on organizations, where they were forced to adapt to continue functioning. Given all the benefits that cloud brings to the table, we hope to see this trend continuing. Moving to new models of acquiring equipment. Traditionally, IT infrastructure was bought to own, is a big capital outlay upfront. As with the current state of South Africa and the economic challenges it faces, we will see that more businesses look to alternatives in the way they acquire infrastructure, like rent and leasing options, as they provide businesses with ways to already realize the value from day one without the need for upfront capital outlay, thus catapulting the ICT strategy forward. Some other interesting findings were that HP and Dell are the leaders for the desktop infrastructure, with Lenovo being third, as well as that all participants indicated that they have an infrastructure, policy and procedures in place, but only 40% have it documented. This is unfortunately not great, given the value that it brings to have it documented, in place and applied consistently. Based on our involvement in the industry for some years, we are not surprised that only 40% of participants have their policies and procedures documented. It is, however, imperative for the business to have it set up. Otherwise, there is no way of the business consistently upholding a high standard of infrastructure, which is key to the foundation of IT. We are hoping that more businesses see the value that this will bring. Businesses not conforming and not taking IT seriously will have a hard time adapting to the new way that IT shapes the business world. I invite everyone to explore these possibilities.
Thank you for joining us, and thanks for taking part in this conversation. We hope to see you in next year's conversation as well. Thanks to our team for shining some light on the results. And I'm going to hand over back to Pumza to take us through the rest of the day.